Hello, everybody. It's me. I'm back again. I thought I would make a topic on um help for those who grieve. Um, what I mean for help for those who grieve, about those who have lost loved ones in death, sadly. How do we cope? How do we deal? You know, how do we try to move on? It's not easy. From experience, I know it's not easy, but how do we continue with our life? How do we how do we just keep going and not fall apart? And well, as it states, many people have different ways that they grieve. Some people isolate themselves and go into a depressive state, and all they can do is cry, not eat, loss of appetite. Um, some people get angry. They don't know how to deal with the loss very well. So they just don't know how to express it to a point where inside they're hurting so much. They take it out in anger, like their whole world is falling apart. And sometimes people try to be strong and tough, like nothing um, is bothering them. They don't cry in front of people. But when in private and when no one's watching, they're crying, maybe in a close up basement, because they don't want to show people that they're weak. That's how they feel. You know, if they see me cry, they're gonna see that I'm a weak person. And that doesn't mean you're weak. It just means that you lost somebody, and that's not easy. It's not easy to lose someone that you really loved and you really cared about. And 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 how bad will it get when you are grieving? Everybody, like I said, reacts in different ways. Some people, it's hard for them to move on. Some people just fall into a depressive state for a long time. Some people, it's still hard, but they start to realize that they have to move on. They have to keep going, and they put that realistic thought in their mind. They do. They keep going, even though you have the feelings of loneliness, and that person isn't there anymore. They used to maybe at nighttime put their arms around you, comforted you, was there, and now they're not there anymore. You lose that, you start to feel lonely. You lose yourself. Um, and like I said, some people act like there's nothing wrong, but it's hard for them to still get close to another person again. Maybe because they're scared that if they move on and they do find somebody that they do love again, that the same thing could happen again. And how can they dread losing another person, in their life that they love? And it's not just a spouse. It could be your parents, it can be a cousin, a good friend, important people that were really strong tied to you. You know, that's the hardest part, is when someone is so close to you. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that loss because they're not there anymore? How do you deal with that? Ugh. Sometimes you get feeling emotionally overwhelmed, because you do. You have crying spells, yearning for the deceased, the loved one, and abrupt mood changes may be experienced. Emotions may further be changed by vivid memories and dreams. Initially, though, the primary reaction may be may be shock and disbelief. It's not easy, because one minute, the person could be sick, and you see certain things changing in your loved one, but you don't want to realize the worst that could happen. You're there with them. Maybe you're in a hospital with them, and they're talking to you like yes, they're going to get better. And then you go to work, you come back, and there's a rapid change in them. They can't breathe very well anymore. They're gurgling, all their stuff is so many things. And then suddenly you go home, find out they had to ship him to another hospital because now he's not waking up, or she's not waking up. Maybe they're bleeding inside them, something that was killing them slowly. And then you go and visit them here and there, hoping that they're going to come out of it. And sadly, they ship that person maybe to another hospital to see if another hospital can help. And out of that hospital, they never make it out alive. That's where they take their last breath. And one minute you know that one week you have them in your arms, and the next week they're gone. They're not there anymore. How do you deal with that? Wow. Abrupt bouts of anxiety, anger, and guilt are also common. This is a common thing when um you have lost a loved one, because you feel maybe you could have done more, Maybe you didn't do enough. Maybe you you could have took him to the hospital sooner, or maybe if you didn't do this, or he didn't do that, or she didn't do that, maybe they'd still be alive. You know, sometimes you feel it's your fault, but a lot of times it's usually because they're just sick. And there's many things that people can get sick from. They could get sick from cancer. They can get sick from cirrhosis of the liver, which I experienced that with my husband. They can get into an accident and never come out of it again. All sorts of things. There's so many things that can happen to your loved one. And just simply old age. Eventually, we can only live so long in this system of things. Um, but how do we deal with that? And yes, we have troublesome thinking patterns. There may be periods during which one's thoughts become erratic and illogical. For instance, a bereaved person may imagine that the deceased one can be heard, felt, or seen, or the bereaved one might find it difficult to concentrate or to remember things. We could be thinking about so many things. I remember from my example, from my experience, I remember when my husband went into the detention center the second time around. He came out with paperwork, with all his blood work and all that kind of stuff. At the time, I really didn't pay attention to it. I didn't think anything about it. I didn't even know what enzymes were. I mean, I knew what they could be, but I had to really medically look up all information on cirrhosis of the liver and what could have caused this, and if there was any hope in helping him. Well, for a long time, he was fine, but he would always throw up. I know it sounds gross, but he would always get sick. And I was always wondering, maybe it was just acid reflux. I was trying to figure out, why do you get sick so much like that? It was like every morning it would start with just like if he drinks coffee. So you were thinking, maybe it was the coffee that was doing it because it had, a lot of stuff in there. Well, it only started with just he'll get sick once a day. So it wasn't like a big thing. So I wasn't thinking anything about it. But I was kind of wondering, wow, why does that happen? And he was like, I don't know. And then over the years, he would just still just get sick once a day. The thing when it started to change more was when his stomach started getting really big. It was like a pregnant belly. It's because he was filling up with fluids inside him. because his liver was getting to the point where it was getting bad, and there was no redirecting or healing it back up. It was to the point it was bad liver. And then he would get cuts and he wouldn't stop bleeding, and that's not normal. And then I saw like up here and then there was a vein like going all the way up to, and that was not normal. And I was like, wow, that changed so fast. And I think it was like 2000, what was it? 2000, I think it was 2018 or 19, something like that. He finally came out of the detention center. And it took 7 years for it finally to show a lot more signs that something was really wrong. And and then suddenly he threw up a lot. But instead of just throwing up, this time he was throwing up blood. And I was like, wow, what is that? So we had to take him to the ER to find out, right in his area here, in his esophagus area. Um, there was a hole or a leakage in there causing the blood to come out. So a doctor had to seal it back up. And that's when we found out that he had cirrhosis of the liver. And why was that? He drank a lot. And I told him many times, "Hunt, you need to stop. You're hurting yourself." And I saw that, but it was up to him to listen if he was going to listen to me or not. And he didn't listen. He knew it, but it was hard for him to stop because he had, you know, drinking him for so long that he was doing it for so long. Now you become addicted to it. And he was trying to get help, but it was too late. It was already too late. Um, but he still, at this point, they said it could be managed, but he has to stop drinking. Huh. He did stop drinking for a little bit. And then the wrong buddies come along and start doing their stuff. He didn't know how to say no. He had to follow what they were doing. Why? Say no. But he started doing it again. He says, I'm only going to drink just a little bit here and there, but not realizing even that little tiny bit of alcohol, now because his liver was bad, was going to affect him big time. I think it was like 2 more years went by and his stomach just kept getting bigger. It's because it was filling up with fluids. And then it went to the point where out of the blue, 1 minute he's normal, and the next minute he was losing his mind. What I mean is, it took 2 years for him to get that way after him finding out he has cirrhosis of the liver. But he started losing, like, who everything was. It was like having dementia or something. He didn't know what the remote control was. He thought the remote control was his phone. The bathroom. He thought it was the chair. He was doing the most weirdest things and it worried me. And I had to go to work. So it was so much. And then all I know is I had to I had to call into work because he got to the point where he was just acting out of the ordinary. So we took him to the ER. They found out the same thing, his mind wasn't right. It's because we have ammonia in our body, um, which is in our urine and all this stuff but supposedly it went to his brain and it caused his brain to be affected. Finally, after being admitted, I think it was like a week after, I finally saw the Oscar again. I saw him again, like the normal my love, you know, and there he is, the normal, back to normal, thinking he was going to be okay. But suddenly I had to go to work. I come back and he's gargling. He can't even speak right. He was trying to get rid of me. I just think it's because he didn't want me to see him that way. But I got the nurses in there and I said, something is wrong. Something isn't right. This is not him. Okay. And then they put him on the ventilators again. And they took 4 ounces of blood out of his stomach because all this came unattached again. And he was bleeding inside in 2 parts. So they asked me right there and then, you know, like anybody, you know, the doctor thought, he could help him. And he realized it was too late. Now his cirrhosis of the liver was more deeply ingrained in him than he thought. No, there was no coming out of it. He wanted to see if I would do comfort care for him. I couldn't do it because I felt like there could be hope. So he went to another hospital. Right there, he had strokes. He had a few strokes. His brain was not right. And finally, they put him into another hospital because um, they thought it was something with his brain, not realizing it's the cirrhosis of the liver that was causing him, that affected him all through his body already. And that's when they told me right there and then that there was no hope, that he wasn't coming out of it. And if they did do a liver transplant, which they refused because it was because of alcohol, they refused to treat people that do drink a lot because they feel like if they do a transplant and they continue to do it after, what was the point of getting a liver? I understand where they're coming from, but I knew right there and then he was suffering so much. You saw it very much. And they tried everything. He went to 3 hospitals. There was no coming out of it this time. The first doctor that saw him with the first thing, he said, if you can manage it now, but if you continue to drink, he says, I promise you, you get admitted into the hospital a second time, you might not ever leave the hospital. He was right. The doctor was right. So, and from there, I had to make the hardest decision because they said his heart was already, it's like each part of his organs was slowly shutting down, weren't working anymore. So he was slowly dying. And his heart was already going bad. Um, and they told me, well, all they can do is put him into a nursing home. And if they put him into a nursing home, he might just die right there. So he wanted to comfort care. And I never left his side until he took his last breath. And I had two loving brothers, a brother and sister that were with me, that comforted me through the whole thing. And I remember going through a depressive state so bad. It wasn't easy. And it still isn't. It's been since 2022, 23, 24, 25. It'll be 4 years almost. November 2nd, I think. It will be 4 years that that I've that I've been a widow. But I know from experience it's not easy, especially a spouse that you really loved. But it's not easy losing anybody, even your own mother, your parents. I mean, I remember when my mother was passed, when she passed away, it wasn't easy for me either. My heart broke. She was fighting cancer. She was fighting 2 cancers at once. And just to see a strong woman become, where she couldn't do anything for herself anymore. And you could see her getting sicker and sicker each time. None of that was easy. And we went up to visit her like at least twice a week or something like that because she was in Syracuse and we're in Rome, and I had, kids to get out of school at the time. I was going to school. I had so much, but we always made time to go see my mother. She had some tumor of the, in her throat, which is very common with people that have a history of smoking and things like that. Um, and she had blood cancer at the same time. And I saw her just fighting and fighting, and she had like a trach in her throat. Well, for a little bit, she just had like the mask, where she could have air. And then realizing that that wasn't doing her no good anymore. She needed something more. Well, all I know is that she fought and she fought. She did so much chemo. I mean, they were trying to shrink the tumor in the throat and at the same time try to get, rid of the blood cancer that she was dealing with. When one was, this was shrinking, the other one was coming back stronger. And then when they tried to do something to help the other one, this started coming back more. And the main thing that really got my mother is, how they say it takes, I think it's like two seconds. If you're not revived after 2 seconds, you can go brain dead. That's exactly what happened to my mom. Because she came out of it, I think it took them, I think it was 4 or 5 seconds to revive her. But they had to do it 4 times. And she kept on having seizures and she was brain dead. So the hardest choice me and my sister had to make is, do you want comfort care for your mom? My sister wanted to say yes. I was the one that kept it a week longer. No, 2 weeks longer, just to be on the safe. Nothing changed. So I did comfort care for my mom. And my sister and us agreed together. It was the best because there was no change after 2 weeks. I took, and finally she, in her comfort care, it took her 2 days. I think she finally, comfort care is like they're dying, they're going on their own, but they give them like medicine to ease the pain. I guess when you're dying slowly, you can feel pain, but there's medicine to take away the pain so they don't feel that. And they just naturally just go on their own time. And my son, that was the most devastating. Also, when you're a mom, you're pregnant, and you're getting everything ready for your child to be born. Well, I had everything for my son to be born and everything. And then suddenly they tell me my son is dead. That was the most devastating thing. I didn't know how to take it. I was angry. I didn't know how to how to deal. My eyes were so swollen. and so puffy from so much crying. All you heard when I was in a hospital, all I heard was all these beautiful babies crying. Beautiful babies. And in mine, all you heard was quietness. But I did get to see my baby before I had to bury him. He looked just like his dad. He had some of me too. I saw that. But he looked a lot like his dad. I know his dad was devastated because that was his only child, from what he knows. And I don't know, he always made that assumption because I already had 4 kids. What is the big deal losing one? I was like, what is the big deal? All my kids are different. They're all unique and special in their own way. How do you, each child is uniquely special. So why wouldn't I be upset about the one that I lost? But he always says that I was the strong one because I didn't cry as much as he did. I did. That's why my eyes were so puffy in the hospital. My eyes were so swollen. It was so bad. And then it took me a few months to accept the idea that that happened to me. And I would cry, but I go somewhere and cry by myself. So somebody had to be strong. And I guess it had to be me. Like I said, losing a loved one is not an easy thing ever. You get affected. You get affected. You really do. That's why after I lost my son, I was scared to even think about having any more kids. Because I didn't know what could happen to this one or the next one. I couldn't do it. I got turned off on the idea. So, and then to love again, I can love again. But it's just how that person that you really loved is always going to be on my heart or be on that person's heart. But sometimes your heart is so big that you can make room for love one more time. But you just have to be smart in choosing the right person for yourself. If you choose to do that again for the last time in your life, maybe. But it's how you deal with it. Because I know some people like to withdraw. I mean, they have, some people don't like to be around others. When they have lost a loved one, they isolate themselves, they withdraw from others. That's expected. I'm sorry, but that is very expected. And yes, it would be difficult handling essential tasks like essential tasks like if you have to go out to work or if you have to take your kids to school or suddenly you're the one left responsible for all the bills, all the everything. How do you deal with that? How do you, because before there's two, especially if you lost a spouse. When there's two of you, you're making it happen, you're teamworking, you're thriving, you're bringing in, money to help the whole family, survive, to support them, to support your living costs, your food, you know, and then suddenly it's just one person and maybe just kids. So that one person is responsible for everything. And it becomes a difficulty because so now there's only one income coming in. Or like when your parents, if one of them are deceased, um, you might have to go over it to help a lot more your mother or your father, the one that's still living, because now that person that was there supporting and caring, the two people caring for each other, that person isn't there anymore. You got to be a support too. And will we ever be happy again? Yes. Yes, we can be happy again. It's just, you never forget. You never forget the good memories and the good things that, that you had. But you can be happy again. You can love again too. It's just, I think sometimes we're more worried, could this happen again? You know, you fall in love with somebody, or if it's somebody you plan to eventually marry again, I don't know. Could you love again? Sometimes you might be worried, could this same thing happen again? Or sometimes that's kind of the scary part too. Have a broken heart in one, and then you have to have a broken heart in two. That's crazy. But when you're able to survive many things and come out of it in one piece, regardless that you had to suffer depression, um, ah, with withdrawing from others, isolating yourself from others because you just don't know how to deal at the moment. But this is where you try your best, you know, and how long does it take to recover from all that? It's hard to say because sometimes some people it might take months. Some people it might take weeks. And some people it might take years. It varies on the person because some of us are accepting the idea, we are able to accept the idea that our loved one is gone and that we have to be realistic, and accept that idea. And when we're able to do that, that's the next step of moving on. But never forgetting the good things of that person, the good memories, the happy times. And it's lovely when you have support from family, from friends, some good support, maybe to help you out and to put a, put your head on their shoulders to say, wow, I'm not alone. I have a lot of people that care about me. And when you are struggling, they're there to give you a hand, even with just small little things. So it's nice to have that support. And yes, we have to watch our diet and make time for exercise because we do. Because when we isolate ourselves, sometimes we don't want to do anything, especially when we lost our loved one. We go into a depressive state. Some people eat a lot, but some people don't even touch food. They don't even want to even touch it at all. So it varies depending on the person. And get plenty of sleep. I remember there was many nights that I would just hold a pillow and cry. But I would cry myself to sleep. But I did feel better the next morning because I got enough sleep, even though my eyes were cried out. And everyone does grieve differently. Like I mentioned before, everybody has different ways of grieving and a different, sometimes it takes people weeks, sometimes months, many months, or sometimes years before they're able to accept the idea and try to just keep living, just keep going, and maybe even moving on eventually. Some people never do move on, like when it comes to, meeting someone else or something, but some people just try to have to accept it and just continue with your life. But you never forget. You never forget the good things. And never, it says, and also when we're going through that, we should avoid self-destructive habits like drinking too much alcohol. A lot of people do that to run away from their problems, and that's not a good thing. Drugs, because people feel like that's the relief for them, which really it causes more of a problem, really, because the problem didn't go away. It already happened, and there's not bringing it back either. And yes, you need it. It's not wrong to grieve. It's important to grieve, but it's how you spend your time doing it. And it's important to keep a routine always. You should never get off task. Try not to get off task on that because I know it's hard when you just lost that loved one. You don't care about anything. All you want to do is grieve. You want to cry. You want to go into a depressive state. You just want to isolate yourself from everyone and you just want to be left alone. And yes, you should always avoid making big decisions too soon. Like anything, like if you want to move somewhere or um, you might want to get remarried or something like that. I would wait until you know that you're ready for stuff like that. You have to be ready for that, and you have to know that you are ready. So you should avoid acting too soon on things like that. Take your time. And always remember your loved ones, your mom, your dad, your spouse, maybe your kids, your uncle, your friend. Always remember them. Remember the good things. Like take out like a an album, a picture book. Or like if you have pictures on Facebook or memories of them, it's nice to just look and remember the good things. Remember them, never forget their face, never forget anything about them. Because they do bring bring pleasant memories to you, especially the good ones. And then get away. Like if you want to go on vacation, you know, then now is time to say yes. Now is time to move. Time to get, myself on task. Time to keep on moving with my life. But never forget. Never forget. And then it's also nice to help others because it makes you feel better. It makes you feel good. And then if you experience the same thing, maybe you can also be a comfort to another person that has went through the same thing as you have, knowing that they're not alone. But also, just, you know, you can help others. Like if there's a friend that just lost a loved one, maybe you could go and help them, like grab groceries, make things less stressful for them because they're going through a lot. It's not easy. And even if they just lost a spouse, a mom, a dad, cousin, someone that was close to you. So, like I said, it's very important to never forget. Never forget the memories and the good memories of your loved one. Even if they weren't so great, maybe they had one moment of something good about them. Even if it was one little thing. They're still like, especially if it's your parent, maybe they were cruel or wicked, but they had few little moments out of their life that they had this beautiful moment about themselves. If they didn't, they're still your parent. All you can say, I exist because of them at this moment. But when you lose someone that you love is different, especially when they were loving and they were caring, nurturing to you. They respected you. They gave you the love that you deserved. Those are people to be cherished in your heart and never lose that. And it's not wrong to ever forget them, but we do have to move on. We do have to, you know, realize that we're still alive and we have to keep going. We have to keep living. For what? For ourselves. Maybe for love, for other loved ones. Maybe to be a comfort to others, knowing that they're not alone. That there are many people like us that are out there that have suffered many times over and over and over again. How strong are you to be able to survive many losses of loved ones that you cherished in your life? And you will never forget them. You keep them here, keep them in your heart. I hope this video was um, helpful in some way. No, it was. I came up with this topic because not many people talk about, you know, grieving of a loved one, how to grieve, and it's not a simple thing to talk about. It's a hard thing to talk about, especially when you experienced it multiple times, over and over again. And you still come out of it in one piece, and you're still moving, and you're still going, and you're still living. Life is important. Don't forget that. Life is a gift. It's precious. So, if you got anything out of this video, I hope it I hope it helped in some way. If you guys want to leave a comment or anything to me, it's fine. But it, you know, it has to be positive. It has to be maybe you lost a loved one and maybe you can, you know, talk about how you dealt with it. And then maybe we can converse in how I dealt with it. It's not easy, but it's how do we move on? And we have to move on somehow. We have to just keep on living our life to the full until it's our turn to go. Thank you for watching my video, and until the next video, adios, guys. Adios. Bye. Have a good night.